Imagine this. A plumber is working in a customer's backyard when he digs up something strange. A tortoise with a photograph of a man mysteriously sealed to its shell. The man in the photo looks trapped, almost like he's crying for help. If it were you standing there, what would you do? Would you scream and run? Or would you try to set the man in bondage free? Was not imagination, but a reality of a skilled plumber called Biola. He received a mysterious call that led him to an unfamiliar mansion in the city. The unknown woman's voice was soft, almost hypnotic, urging him to hurry. As he entered the grand hall, the air felt thick, charged with a strange energy. Unaware that something unnatural awaited him, he reached the backyard where the soakaway needed fixing, but his eyes caught something odd. Buried under a thin layer of soil was a small, ornate tortoise glowing faintly. Inside, he could see the image of a man, his eyes wide with fear. Biola froze, staring at the tortoise, unsure whether it was some clever trick. The man inside moved, his lips forming silent pleas for help. A chill ran down Biola's spine as he felt the city's night air thicken around him. He knelt, brushing the soil from the tortoise, noticing strange symbols etched on its surface. The symbols seemed to pulse as if alive, reacting to his touch. Biola wondered if this was part of some dark magic he had only heard about. The man's image twisted, mouth opening as if he could speak, yet no sound emerged. Biola's heart raced, torn between fear and curiosity. Could he ignore this mysterious figure, or would his conscience demand action? From inside the house, faint footsteps echoed and Biola's hands trembled. The unknown woman might return at any moment, expecting him to finish the soak away. He debated whether to bury the tortoise again or risk revealing its existence. Biola finally lifted the tortoise, holding it close, feeling a strange warmth from within. The man inside reached out with a shadowy hand, desperate and pleading. A whisper brushed Biola's mind. "Set me free before it's too late." Biola quickly slid the tortoise into his bag, careful not to jostle it too much. His hands were shaking, but he forced himself to appear calm and professional. The city's night felt heavier, as if it knew he carried something forbidden. He returned to the house, kneeling to inspect the soil away without looking suspicious. The unknown woman watched silently, her eyes sharp, almost knowing something was off. Biola kept his movements deliberate, hiding the secret that could change everything. As he worked, the tortoise inside his bag pulsed faintly, almost impatiently. Biola could feel the man's presence, whispering like a shadow in his mind. Every clink of his tools seemed amplified, echoing the tension of the night. The woman finally spoke, her voice soft but commanding, asking if everything was okay. Biola smiled politely, masking the fear that gnawed at him from within. He nodded, assuring her the soak-away would be fixed soon, hiding the tortoise's truth. After finishing the soak-away, the woman invited Biola into her room under the pretense of showing him something. The room was lavishly decorated with pictures and trinkets lining the walls. As Biola's eyes scanned the portraits, one figure made his blood run cold. Sola, the man trapped inside the tortoise. Biola's heart skipped a beat as he realized the man in the picture was the same one pleading for help in his bag. The coincidence, or perhaps fate, was too precise to ignore. Questions swirled in his mind. Who is this woman? And why was Sola both in the tortoise and on her wall? He tried to remain calm, forcing a casual smile as he admired the other pictures. Yet, every glance at Sola's image made the whispers in his mind grow louder. Biola's hands itched to open the bag and confront the truth of the mysterious prisoner. The woman noticed his lingering gaze, tilting her head with a knowing smile. Her eyes seemed to pierce through him, almost daring him to speak. Biola swallowed hard, realizing he had stepped into something far beyond plumbing. Biola smiled warmly. "You have a lot of beautiful pictures," he said, his eyes scanning the walls with genuine admiration. Among all the images, one caught his attention more than the others, and he lingered there thoughtfully. He hoped his compliment would seem innocent, simply an appreciation for the craftsmanship of the portraits. The woman, Mrs. Dara, noticed his gaze and smiled politely, thinking he truly admired her taste. She was a tall, striking woman, rich, influential, and elegant, commanding attention without even trying. Biola couldn't help but be impressed, admiring both her poise and the artistry of her collection. He stepped closer, studying the frames with sincere curiosity, pretending to notice the details for the first time. His eyes lingered on the portrait that felt different. Yet, he kept his expression neutral. "Mrs. Dara said nothing, simply allowing him to enjoy the display, confident in her visitor's manners. Biola continued his casual tour of the room. Commenting on the fine details of the other pictures, he felt the need to understand why one image seemed so striking. Though he said nothing out of place, everything remained calm and refined as Mrs. Dara believed he was simply appreciating her exquisite collection. Mrs. Dara's presence filled the room effortlessly, a reflection of her success and influence. She was stunning, elegant, and commanding, a woman who drew attention without even trying. As the CEO of multiple companies across the globe, from Paris and London to Dubai and Lagos, her reputation preceded her. Biola admired her poise while continuing to glance at the portraits. He allowed his eyes to wander naturally, as if drawn by chance rather than intent. The woman nodded, pleased, unaware that her guest had already seen more than any visitor ever had. Biola's fingers twitched slightly as he felt the tortoise pressing against his side. The man trapped inside seemed to move subtly, urging him to pay attention without exposing itself. Biola allowed the compliment to mask his probing thoughts, careful not to raise suspicion. Biola cleared his throat, shifting his focus back to business. "Is it okay if I take my payment now?" he asked politely, keeping his tone casual. Mrs. Dara nodded, reaching for her checkbook with a gracious smile. She handed him a thick envelope, the weight of it confirming the generous sum inside. Biola accepted it with a smile, careful not to reveal the nervous excitement bubbling within him. Biola finally arrived at his modest apartment, the bag still safely hidden at his side. He placed it on the table and stared at it, knowing that the night's work had only just begun. The man inside shifted again, eyes pleading silently for release. Biola placed the bag on his table, ready to finally inspect the mysterious tortoise. As he reached inside, he felt an intense, almost suffocating urge not to release the image. A strange energy seemed to surround the tortoise, pressing against his senses like a warning. He pulled back slightly, his heart racing. "If my spirit does not feel like releasing you, you must be a bad person," he muttered aloud. The city's night outside felt distant, as if time itself had paused around him. Biola's hands hovered over the tortoise, unsure whether curiosity or caution should guide him. The man's image inside the tortoise shifted, but the energy pressing against Biola remained strong. He sensed that forcing it open might bring consequences he couldn't control. Biola knew he had to trust his instincts, no matter how desperate the trapped man appeared. With a deep breath, Biola lowered the tortoise back into the bag, resisting the urge to release it. He felt a mixture of relief and tension, knowing he had made the right choice for now. The whispers from within seemed to fade, though they left an uneasy echo in his mind. Biola leaned back in his chair, thinking carefully about what had just happened. He realized that freeing someone blindly could be dangerous. The following morning, Biola returned to Mrs. Dara's mansion, carrying himself with calm professionalism. He pretended to ask about the soil-away job from the previous night, masking his true intentions. In reality, he wanted answers about the pictures, especially the one that had captured his attention so deeply. Mrs. Dara greeted him warmly, her elegance and confidence filling the room as always. Biola noticed her impeccable style and the quiet authority she carried in every gesture. He forced a casual smile, careful not to reveal his curiosity about Ka's portrait. "I wanted to check if everything was working fine," Biola said, keeping his tone light. As he spoke, his eyes subtly wandered toward the wall of portraits once more. That one particular image, the one of the man, pulled at him, urging silent questions. Mrs. Dara nodded, seemingly pleased by his professionalism. Unaware of his true reason for returning, Biola lingered, pretending to admire the craftsmanship and arrangement of the pictures. Every glance at Ka's portrait made his mind race with possibilities and hidden stories. He inched closer to the wall, using casual movements to study the images without raising suspicion. The other portraits told ordinary stories of business and family, but this one felt different. Biola sensed a mystery lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for him to uncover it. He noticed small details in the frame, symbols and patterns he hadn't seen before. Biola's fingers itched to take notes or ask subtle questions about the man in the picture. "Your collection is impressive," Biola said, nodding toward the wall of portraits. He kept his voice casual, allowing it to sound like a genuine compliment rather than an investigation. Mrs. Dara's smile widened. Believing he truly appreciated the artistry of her collection, Biola studied the man's portrait again, comparing it in his mind to the image in the tortoise. He realized the resemblance was undeniable, though he dared not mention it aloud. Every subtle detail seemed to hint at a story that Mrs. Dara had carefully hidden. As he prepared to leave, Biola's eyes lingered on Ka's image once more. A quiet determination began to form in his mind, planning how he could learn the truth. As Biola's eyes wandered, he noticed a large framed wedding picture of Mrs. Dara and her husband. Curiosity tugged at him, and he decided to ask a simple, polite question. "Where is he now?" Biola asked, gesturing subtly toward the picture. Mrs. Dara's expression shifted slightly, her smile fading into a calm, distant look. "He is dead," she said softly, her voice steady, but carrying a weight of sorrow. Biola froze for a moment, surprised by the sudden revelation. Though he kept his composure, he wondered silently how her husband's death connected. He wondered why Ka's image had been placed among all these pictures, so prominent yet mysterious. Biola lingered on one particular portrait, a young man with sharp eyes and a serious expression. Something about the image mirrored the urgency and fear he had seen in the tortoise. He felt certain that this was Sola, though he had to proceed cautiously. He smiled lightly, pretending to admire the child's portrait like he did with all the others. Mrs. Dara noticed his attention and assumed he appreciated the family's unity and elegance. Biola's mind, however, raced with questions about why Ka's image had been trapped underground. Biola counted the children silently, confirming there were 7 in total, each framed meticulously. The thought of one of them being imprisoned in a tortoise sent a shiver down his spine. He knew he would need to discover the truth without alerting Mrs. Dara. He allowed his gaze to drift back to the wedding portrait, connecting it with the children's images. Biola realized the family's history was more complicated than appearances suggested. The tortoise in his bag felt heavier now, a constant reminder of the secrets waiting to be revealed. He pointed subtly and asked, "Who is he?" keeping his tone casual and respectful. Mrs. Dara's gaze softened, her voice carrying both pride and sorrow as she replied. "My son," she said gently. "His name is Sola, but we call him Sola for short." Biola listened carefully, pretending to admire the family while absorbing her words. "Mrs. Dara continued, her voice filled with a mix of admiration and grief. "Kawal's name truly brought wealth to our family. Just as his name promises," she explained. Biola nodded politely, intrigued by the way she spoke of both fortune and misfortune. "He has been a blessing in many ways. Yet his life has also brought pain and sadness." Biola's mind raced, connecting the dots between Sola's portrait and the mysterious tortoise he carried. He remained calm, careful not to betray his growing suspicion. Mrs. Dara's words hinted at a deeper story, one that was both magical and tragic. He studied her expression, noting the subtle mix of pride, grief, and caution in her eyes. Biola realized that Sola's life had been far more complicated than a simple family portrait could show. He felt a growing urgency to understand why Sola had been trapped in the tortoise. Mrs. Dara glanced at the portraits behind her, her hand lingering on Ka's frame. Biola watched carefully, pretending to admire the craftsmanship while absorbing every detail. The story of wealth and sorrow that she hinted at made the mystery even more compelling. Biola felt the pull of the tortoise in his bag, as if Sola himself sensed the conversation. He knew he had to tread carefully, asking the right questions without raising suspicion. "It must be very special to bring both blessings and challenges," Biola said softly. "Mrs. Dara nodded, her eyes reflecting both pride and sorrow simultaneously. Biola's curiosity deepened, the desire to know the truth about Sola and the tortoise growing stronger. Then Biola said, "You must be a wicked mother to have put your son inside a tortoise." The woman froze, her eyes widening in shock. She had never told anyone about the dark secret she carried for decades. How could this stranger possibly know? Her lips trembled as she stammered. What? What are you talking about?" She glanced around nervously as if the walls might have ears. Biola's gaze was firm, piercing through her lies. "I know everything," Biola continued, his voice low and deliberate. "The little boy you trapped in that glass tortoise. The curse you placed on him, so he could never grow. And how you kept him hidden to protect your greed." The woman's knees weakened, and she clutched the wooden chair for support. No one was supposed to know about that." "Who sent you? Was it the sorcerer?" she asked in a whisper. Then Mrs. Adabel broke down and started crying. Her voice trembled as she wiped her tears with the edge of her wrapper. She said she was a good woman, that when she and her husband were young, they had nothing. They struggled in poverty, but they loved each other deeply. Life was hard, yet they endured. Over the years, she gave birth to 7 children, 3 boys and 4 girls. She explained that a prophecy had once been given about their family, that one of their children would carry immense wealth, but that same child would also be the source of great disaster for them. At the time, she did not know which child it would be. She and her husband prayed day and night that this prophecy would not come to pass, but fate had other plans. With a heavy sigh, she revealed that the child in question was none other than Kawal, her second son. Kawal, my son, you brought riches into this house, but you also brought the pain that is eating us alive today, she sobbed, clutching her chest as if her heart could no longer bear the weight of her words. In the prophecy about Sola's birth, they said he would bring immense sorrow and pain. At 17, he would kill his father and defile his own mother and sisters. He would then slaughter his brothers before ending his own life. Biola's breath caught as the words settled in his mind like ice. He stared at Mrs. Dara. Unsure if he wanted to believe her or not. The room felt smaller as though the walls were closing in on him. His voice shook when he finally broke the silence. What did you do, Mrs. Dara? Biola asked cautiously. He leaned forward, searching her face for any sign of deceit. Mrs. Dara lowered her gaze, her voice soft but steady. The day the prophecy was spoken, I swore to stop it at all costs. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them in her lap. I was a mother before I was anything else, she continued. But I was also a woman who could not ignore such a warning. She looked at Biola as if expecting him to judge her. Biola sat still, his mind caught between pity and suspicion. Outside, a faint wind rattled the window frame. It felt as though the house itself was listening to their words. At first, Mr. and Mrs. Dara thought it was all just a child's fantasy. But as the years went by, they saw an immense wealth pouring into their lives. People began to whisper that they had performed dark rituals to gain such fortune. They had completely forgotten the old prophecy given by the strange seer. Sola grew into a handsome, confident young man surrounded by luxury. Their home became the envy of the entire community. Yet a shadow lingered. On Sola's 17th birthday, the air was thick with celebration and laughter. Friends, family, and dignitaries filled the compound with gifts and blessings. No one imagined that the day would turn from joy to horror in an instant. Sola, in excitement, offered to help move one of the guest cars. As he tried to reverse the vehicle, his foot slipped off the brake. In a tragic flash, the car struck his father, knocking him lifeless to the ground. The screams of the guests pierced the once joyful atmosphere. Mrs. Dara rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, the prophecy she had buried in her memory came rushing back. She remembered the strange woman's voice warning her years ago. A son born under certain signs would bring wealth, but also death. Now, as she knelt beside her husband's body, the truth struck her heart. Mrs. Dara met the mysterious seer. Some crossed themselves in fear, convinced the family was cursed. The wealth that had once brought admiration now bred suspicion and dread. Mrs. Dara's mind swirled between grief and disbelief. Sola stood frozen, trembling at the sight of his father's blood. He could barely comprehend that his own hands had caused the tragedy. Some relatives urged her to send Sola away, fearing further misfortune. Others believed that the prophecy's curse was now complete. But deep within her, Mrs. Dara feared this was only the beginning. The burial was swift with an eerie silence hanging over the moors. No songs, no celebration of life, only whispers of doom. Sola could not bring himself to look anyone in the eye. At night, Mrs. Dara would wake to hear strange footsteps in the compound. Sometimes she swore she heard her husband's voice calling her name. Sola too began to dream of a shadow watching him from the corner of his room. While still flowed in, but now it tasted like ashes in their mouths. Every coin felt like a reminder of the prophecy's price. The community began avoiding them as though death lingered in their home. On the anniversary of his father's death, a strong wind shook the house. Doors banged open on their own, and the lights flickered endlessly. Mrs. Dara swore she saw her husband's figure standing in the doorway. Sola grew more withdrawn, refusing to drive or even touch a car. He feared that every movement might unleash another disaster. But destiny, it seemed, was not yet done with him. One evening, a letter arrived with no name or address. Inside was a single sentence written in shaky handwriting. You cannot escape what was spoken at your birth. Mrs. Dara locked the letter away, hoping Sola would never see it. But the boy had already noticed her trembling hands. His questions went unanswered, deepening his quiet dread. Years later, when Sola turned 21, the mysterious seer returned. She stood at their gate, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Her first words chilled them to the bone. The second half begins now. The mysterious seer said, If you don't want your son to lie with you, your daughters and kill your remaining sons. Take this. She handed over a strange tortoise with Sola's image trapped inside. Bury it before midnight, and his growth will stop forever. Mrs. Dara took the tortoise with trembling hands, her eyes fixed on the tiny image inside. The seer's warning echoed in her ears like a curse. She knew there was no time to waste. That night, she went behind the house to a quiet corner under the old mango tree. With her bare hands, she began to dig into the cool earth. The tortoise felt heavier than glass should. When she placed the tortoise in the ground, a cold wind brushed her cheek. She quickly covered it with soil and stepped back. The air felt strange, as if the world was holding its breath. At that exact moment, Sola, who had been playing inside, stopped laughing. He clutched his chest and staggered. Within seconds, he collapsed to the floor, motionless. Mr. Dara shouted for help as the children screamed in panic. Servants ran to get water and called the village doctor, but Sola did not respond to anything. Before the night ended, Sola slipped into a deep coma. His breathing was slow and his face looked pale. Mrs. Dara watched silently, remembering the seer's words. Mrs. Dara turned slowly toward Biola, her eyes glistening with restrained emotion. The crowd fell silent, sensing something heavy in the air. Even the birds outside seemed to pause their singing. She took a deep breath, her voice steady but charged with meaning. With all I have said, Biola, am I still a bad mother? Her words cut through the room like a blade through silk. Biola's lips parted, but no sound came out. The weight of her question hit him harder than he expected. He blinked rapidly, trying to find the right words. Memories flashed in his mind. Times when he judged her without knowing the truth. Times when he turned away instead of asking why. His throat tightened. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the faces around them. Every pair of eyes was on him, waiting for an answer. The silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. Mrs. Dara's gaze did not waver. She stood with quiet dignity, her shoulders squared. She had laid her soul bare, and now it was his turn to speak. Biola's voice trembled when he finally spoke. I don't know what to say. It was the only truth he could offer in that moment. She smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Then perhaps, my son, it's time to listen more than speak. Her tone was calm, but firm. The room exhaled collectively as if a tense string had been loosened. Some nodded in silent agreement. Others avoided Biola's eyes entirely. Biola's hands curled into fists at his sides. He wasn't angry at her. He was angry at himself for being blind for so long. Shame pulled in his chest. Mrs. Dara stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his arm. It's never too late to see people for who they really are, Biola. She whispered. He swallowed hard, feeling the warmth of her touch. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was an opening, a bridge he didn't deserve, but needed to cross. As the room began to stir again, Biola realized this was more than just a conversation. It was a turning point, one that could rewrite their future if he let it. In the dream, Sola's hollow eyes glistened with tears as he reached out through a thick, swirling mist. Biola, release me, please. Biola's hands trembled. Something in Sola's voice sounded human, desperate. But deep inside, he knew that opening that tortoise might unleash something far worse than the nightmares. Mrs. Dara had warned him in her sharp, trembling voice. If you break that seal, you won't just destroy my family. You'll doom the whole village. Biola clutched his head, torn between compassion and fear. Another night without sleep would surely drive him mad. But another night with that tortoise sealed might condemn Sola forever. And then at exactly midnight, the tortoise moved by itself. Biola froze. This was just the beginning. Watch out for part 2.